वी आर इन अ प्लेस जहाँ चाहिँ पहिला ब्रिटिस थियो, ब्रिटिसले एउटा सर्टन वेले टिबेटलाई हेर्छ, सर्टन वेले चाइनालाई हेर्छ, दुईजनाको रिलेसनलाई हेरेर आएको छ। ब्रिटिसहरू जान्छ, ब्रिटिस गएपछि इन्डियाको हातमा कन्ट्रोल आउँछ, इन्डियाले चाहिँ पहिलाकै हिसाबले गर्न खोज्छ, चाइना रिफ्युजेस, किनभने दे डिडन्ट अग्री इन द फर्स्ट प्लेस नै। यो सबै कुरा गर्दा एन्ड वी विल टक अबाउट लाइक नेपालसँगको रिलेसन, आई थिङ्क हामीहरू अलिकति डिबेट चाहिँ भएको छ, बट देन इट्स इन्ट्रेस्टिङ यहाँतिर किन भनेपछि अब युएस कहाँबाट आउँछ यो अल अफ दिसको बिचमा?
डु यु मिन आजको डेटमा कि
त्यो बेला लाइक युएसको ओरिजिन कहाँ छ? यो हाम्रो अब एसियाको यो जुन इन्भाइरोमेन्टमा जहाँ चाहिँ इन्डिया र टिबेट / चाइनाको बिचमा सम सोर्ट अफ रिलेसन छ, टिबेट के अरे ब्रिटिसहरू फर्किरहेछ, नाउ इन्डिया इन्डिपेन्डेन्ट भएछ, यो सबै हुँदा युएस फार वेस्टबाट कहाँबाट यहाँ इन्फ्लुएन्स आउनु थाल्छ अब यो अल अफ दिसमा?
ओके, इफ आई क्यान आस्क, व्हाट इयर वर यु बोर्न?
90s.
Okay, so you did not see the fall of the Berlin Wall, right?
No.
The Cold War was a very interesting period. Okay? Cold War, US interest in South Asia, comes.
Okay. So it is
before that as well. Comes from the Second World War itself, actually.
So it's basically geographical भन्दा पनि ideological war को perspective मा it's communism versus capitalism.
Communism भन्दा पनि पहिला, हैन?
Okay.
Second World War मा चाहिँ के हुन्छ भने चाहिँ Japan is the enemy, right? Japan has occupied big tracts of territory in Southeast Asia, in China as well. They control China for a large portion of time, right? Chiang Kai-shek is the big Generalissimo. He's, at this time, Mao and Chiang Kai-shek are working together. The US basically is the US, Great Britain, France, all these countries are, France anyway it wasn't giving, but Great Britain and basically US, they come together to fight the Japanese threat in the Asia Pacific, right? Obviously, Philippines and the US got treaty relations, so but beyond that as well. So what they do is they use Northeast India, Dhaka, all of these places, Northeast India border, flights over the mountains to airdrop supplies into Sichuan, Yunnan to fight the Japanese. Supplies for the Chinese, let's say, guerrilla armies to fight the Japanese. Then there's an American general called Stilwell. Stilwell, what he does is he creates an actual road. Because the Himalayas are really windy. I mean, flying over them every day is not possible. And you have to understand this is a state of war. We've never been in a war, we don't know. From what I've seen of Afghanistan and all of that, you know that there's a lot of equipment, there's a lot of material. I mean, you have 100,000 men, right? How do you feed them? How do you do these things? Weapons, ammunition, so he makes an actual road. Stilwell भन्ने मान्छेले, हैन? Prisoners of war, all of these सबै use गरेर Assam को through, Arunachal को through, त्यसले North East मा बाटो नै काटिदिन्छ के, Sichuan.
So how does China allow them to do this?
Because China is under the Japanese right now.
Okay.
So China is under the Japanese, and Chiang Kai-shek and Mao are both fighting Japan, and US is their ally, So
okay.
This is Second World War, Second World War, then atom bombs, nuclear bomb, nuke गरेपछि, then basically the US is like, okay, it emerges as the solo power.
Right.
Suddenly, obviously USSR or US ma, there is a distinct ideological divide, capitalism versus communism, which is well known. The other part of this divide is that Mao takes power in China and he aligns himself with Stalin, Russia. Whereas Chiang Kai-shek, who is the American preference, he runs away to Taiwan. So there you can see, let's say, that's how basically the divide, Americans basically rooting for Taiwan.
Okay, so त्यहाँबाट सुरु
हुन्छ. Now, while the Americans are also doing this, कोरियामा war हुन्छ. Korean war ma, again, Americans support the South Koreans, Chinese and Soviets support the North Koreans. So I think it's called the 37th parallel. त्यहाँ आएर त्यो DMZ जुन अहिले पनि छ, त्यहाँसम्म basically the countries get divided. Again, the Korean peninsula was taken over by the Japanese. This war was an outcome of that. त्यहाँ चाहिँ divide हुन्छ. So there you can already see the Chi-Com threat or the Chinese communist threat. त्यो CIA आर्काइभ्समा त्यसरी नै भन्छ कि चिकम थ्रेट होइन. Then the Americans also start supporting the Tibetans. Americans tell the Tibetans that we cannot support you, like declaring, like basically in terms of, I can't declare you independent, right? Because there's no other support and all that. What we can do is assist you in your war against the communists. So they start deploying 1956 onwards, basically. There's a very interesting story here. Okay? 1951, when I told you that 17-point agreement signed huncha ni, China, the Chinese communists tell Tibetans that we won't carry out any land reforms. We won't carry out any socialist, let's say, policy measures that they were carrying out in the rest of China, in Tibet, until some time. We want to study. Once you guys are ready, then only we will implement it. That's fine, right? What is not included are the areas where Tibetans live, but are not included under where the Dalai Lama operates, or the Dalai Lama's rule is this. Kham is one of those regions.
So Tibet as a whole, clear China region? No.
Tibet is actually a massive region. Like I said, there are three. Who is a Tibetan is a very, very complex answer. Okay? I know. Because there are large pockets where the Dalai Lama's rule does not matter.
Okay.
I know.
Okay.
And these are areas basically China starts implementing socialist reforms, land reforms, all of these. Especially the monasteries or land holdings. The Tibetans, especially in Kham, start getting irritated, start getting really, really irritated. They start fighting the Chinese. Proper military/guerrilla warfare. The Americans start giving them arms. So the term Khampa, Khampa actually means a person from Kham. Because the war, or rather the revolt against the Chinese, by the Tibetan revolt against Chinese began in Kham. That's where the Khampas have always been known as more brigands. And even across the Himalaya, they're known as brigands. They're known as Gorkhali types, like, Jada name master khale, So US starts airdropping them weapons, airdropping them supplies, ammunition, all of that in their war against Chikoms. 1959, the Dalai Lama decides that, okay, this thing comes all the way to Lhasa. The troubles are coming to Lhasa. But they decide that the Dalai Lama decides he wants to escape. The CIA-trained guerrillas, Tibetan guerrillas, actually assist him in bringing him out of Tibet. So that's the relation, basically how US comes into this complex game, okay? Where the US sort of supports Tibet, from a purely Cold War perspective. It's pure, hard, real politics. Okay? Chinese are communists, Tibetans are not. Tibetans are fighting against communism. Let's supply them weapons. Let's give them training. So 1956 onwards, Tibetans are taken all the way to the US. Colorado, Camp Hale, Colorado Mountains, basically. There's a very funny episode where if the trainers, the CIA trainers, they take the Tibetans to these mountains in Colorado. And they are like master walkers. They can run up mountains and everything like that. But they have zero physical upper body strength. Because all their strength is just spent, like walking up and down, but they don't have any upper body strength. So they start training them in that, like, telling them that, okay, modern, you have to carry guns, right? You have to carry, let's say, operate radios, operate behind enemy lines. To sub training tyan dincha. So त्यो training dincha हैन. In 1959, after the Dalai Lama escapes, China has no reason to, let's say, like, continue with the 17-point agreement. The basis of that agreement is destroyed. So China is like, all right, all over Tibet, we will impose our land reforms, our socialist reforms. That creates further tensions. And once the Dalai Lama escapes, a lot of Tibetans start leaving with him. They don't want to live in the Tibet where communism is basically. And there was a lot of things about communism being atheist, right? Communism being godless. These guys are going to, and they start destroying monasteries and all of that. In any case, they see these, like the Chinese see monasteries as remnants of feudalism, of let's say the serf culture, and that's their logic, right? Like they have come to liberate Tibet from these old serfs, from these old feudal, let's say, like rulers. Okay? The serfs, let's say the guys who are forced to give forced labor जुन दिनु पर्थ्यो नि होइन मोनास्ट्रिजहरूलाई अब तपाईँको जमिनदारहरूलाई होइन त्यो चाहिँ लिबरेट गर्न आएको भन्छन् कि
सो अमेरिकन डेमोक्रेसी जस्तो भयो
Yeah, I mean, empires have that, no?
Right.
I know. Every empire needs some justification or the other. Without giving that justification, I know, हामीले कसरी रुल गर्ने